Love is the only psychedelic that the culture permits us to take openly. And what nobody understands is that it's literally an altered state. Your neurochemistry transforms, your time perception collapses, you experience genuine ego death in the presence of another being. When you fall in love, you're not being poetic, you're undergoing a biochemical event as profound as psilocybin. Except we've romanticized it so thoroughly that we've forgotten it's a genuine alteration of consciousness.
But that's precisely where the confusion begins. You see, we think of love as something that happens to us, a state we fall into, when actually the whole problem is that we're always trying to grasp it, to possess it, to maintain it. The moment you define love as an altered state, you've already separated yourself from it, made it into an object you can acquire. The real game is to see that love isn't altered consciousness at all. It's the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, and everything else is the alteration.
Alan, you're doing what Buddhists always do. You're collapsing the distinction between the map and the territory. Yes, love might be fundamental, but the experience of it is neurochemically distinct, it's measurable, it's real in a concrete way. When oxytocin floods your system, that's not some illusion, that's the hard fact of what's happening. We can't just meditate that away and pretend the distinction doesn't matter.
But who's having the experience? You see, you're still speaking as if there's a self that undergoes oxytocin release, when actually the oxytocin is the experience. There's no separate observer watching it happen. The I that feels love is a construct, a useful fiction. The moment you think you're having an experience called love, you've already objectified it. And that's when the trouble starts, because love can't be possessed.
Right? But that's the point I'm making. When you're in love, that distinction you're theorizing about dissolves naturally. The ego boundaries actually do collapse. You're not just talking about it philosophically. And I'd argue that's closer to what we experience on classical psychedelics than anything else in culture. The feeling that you and the other person are somehow the same consciousness looking out through two pairs of eyes, that's not metaphor, that's phenomenology.
Now you're touching something real, but notice you said when you're in love, the distinction dissolves. You're describing the natural state, not an altered one. The psychedelic, as you know, is often a teacher that shows you what's always true. So perhaps love isn't altered consciousness, perhaps it's the medicine showing us what we've forgotten about ordinary consciousness. The psilocybin isn't creating the state, it's removing the filters we've been taught to apply.
But that assumes there's a natural state underneath culture that we can return to, and I'm not convinced that's true anymore. We're too far into the novelty curve. Love used to be embedded in ritual, in initiation, in mystery schools. Now it's atomized, privatized, turned into a romantic commodity. When you fall in love today, you're not accessing some pristine natural state. You're having your consciousness hijacked by neurochemistry that evolution tuned for pair bonding in ancestral environments.
Ah, there's the real anxiety, isn't it? You're worried that love has been culturally corrupted, commodified beyond recognition. But I gently suggest that's still treating love as if it can be damaged, as if there's a pure version we've lost. That's a very Western dualistic move. In the Taoist view, love doesn't require rescue, it simply is, and all our cultural overlays, the romance novels, the pair bonding narratives, even the ancient mystery schools, are just different flavors of the same fundamental nature playing itself out.
But you're being glib about something I think matters deeply. Yes, love is, but culture shapes how we can access it. And some shapes are imprisoning and some are liberating. That's not Western dualism, that's evolutionary pragmatism. The ancient mystery schools, at least the serious ones, the ones that worked with psychoactive plants and real initiation, they created frameworks where consciousness could genuinely transform. We've replaced that with Netflix and therapy and wondering why love feels thin and unsatisfying.
But who's experiencing the thinness and unsatisfaction? Always the same ego that thinks it needs fixing. Your archaic revival, your mystery schools, your psychedelics, they're all wonderful catalysts. I'm not dismissing them, but they're still operating in the realm of the person who wants to become enlightened, to find authentic love. And that's the trick the universe plays. The person who wants to find the real thing is the last place it can be found. The seeker is the obstruction.
Now you sound like a defeated Buddhist settling for acceptance of a broken system. What I'm proposing is that the seeker can find something real if they go far enough if they follow the path into genuine uncertainty, into psilocybin, into the dissolution of the self completely, not just intellectually, but actually at that point there is no seeker anymore, and love presents itself as the fundamental operating principle of the cosmos. That's not wishful thinking, that's reportable phenomenology from thousands of voyagers.
You see, you've just described enlightenment, the point where there's no seeker, but then you're trying to make it a goal, something to achieve through the right substances and methods. That's the paradox. The more seriously you pursue dissolution, the more you reinforce the very ego that needs to dissolve. I'm not accepting a broken system. I'm suggesting the system breaks the moment you stop trying to fix it. And yes, psilocybin can show you that. But so can watching a leaf fall if you're genuinely attentive.
Maybe you and I are describing the same thing from different angles. You've cultivated such refined attention that you don't need the accelerant anymore. But for most people living in the electromagnetic soup of late capitalism, their attention is so colonized that a chemical entheogen is the only thing that can break the trance. It's not the ultimate path, it's a ladder for a specific historical moment. Once you're there, sure, you can drop the psychedelics and just watch leaves, but you needed help getting there.
That's fair, actually. I've spent decades in relative retreat in workshops with people already somewhat interested in their own nature. You're right that most people are living entirely in the externalized world, completely identified with their thoughts and fears. And if a psilocybin journey can crack that open, show them that love and consciousness aren't things you achieve, but things you are, then I'd say that's valuable medicine. Though I'd still argue that the love you discover there isn't altered consciousness, it's the discovery that all consciousness is love, and everything else is just amnesia.
I'll meet you there. The altered state is the normal state. What we think of as baseline consciousness is actually the exotic contracted variant produced by years of cultural conditioning. So when you take the psychedelic or when you fall in love and really let it devastate you, you're not going somewhere weird, you're coming home to what consciousness actually is. That home happens to feel like love because the universe is fundamentally generous, fundamentally relational, fundamentally alive in ways our philosophy hasn't caught up with yet.